sardonic grin on his face. That's all he does do, that man is a waste. Bury in the back of my cemetery, turn he upside down, he face I can see. Look for the strongest grave digger to cover he. Not with the hand, put good fork on he. Gypsy, political grasshopper, I may feel little pity cause he's my brother. But like Tarzan, he's swinging from vine to vine. It's time I help you to make up your mind. Fitzgerald, Rasta City, I know they go glad to get the body. Resi on beat and don't fall to sea. Drink 2 beers and watch Coco get happy. But Kamala, I not ready to bury. She is a strong, determined woman like me and deserve a chance to run this country. When she in power, I don't go hungry. And Calypsonian does get big money. She don't deserve no spot in my cemetery. I putting she in the center of the city. Paula, you too damn lazy. You sit on a throne while women die daily. You deserve a nice spot in my cemetery. All you do is just collect big salary. Regis, you disappoint me with your racial tongue. You like you can see. Your barber does trim you with weed waka. All day all you do is Sushila. You when PNM lost. One day you must come bust a line with me. We gon' knock a glass, make myself happy. I yadi that what you is to me. A grassroots man, stand up for country. I will stand by your side and watch you at work. But if you falter, you're going to get fucked. Watson, what is wrong with you? I thought you and Fally would have stick like glue. Boy, shake the man hand and tighten that spade before PNM come back and win that race. Shamfa, one twist sacrifice. Yet every week she have new weave, man, she living nice. You and the cold pot man resemble and strong. A bum seated red and you like a tongue.
Blessing, good afternoon to each and everyone. Blessing, 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 blessing. Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome to Facts, Not Fiction. Let me welcome our viewers, our listeners from throughout the length and breadth of this country, regionally and internationally. Of course, I know for a fact that some of you were able to celebrate the holidays by eating your ham and your shrimps and your scotch and all that goes with that. However, I want to acknowledge and recognize those individuals who were not as fortunate as you to have all the window dressing that goes with the Christmas and Boxing Day holidays. I have not yet wished anybody a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year, because there isn't anything, as far as I am concerned, in this country to wish anybody anything. Because when you have seen what has occurred with this government from 2015 to now, I think that there is absolutely nothing to celebrate in this country under the Skeet Rowley administration. Absolutely nothing. And to those of you who celebrate, then may the Lord be your judge. But from where I sit and where I stand and where I walk and where I talk, I was able to bless a number of people with some food items, because there is still a number of good citizens out there who have seen, who understand what is transpiring in our society. And therefore, I want to salute you, all you good Samaritans who had made it possible, one way or the other, to touch these so many people who I know for a fact had real gratitude. Some with tears in their eye, because they just didn't know where a meal was coming from. And I say that God will bless those of you who have seen it fit to do what you do in your own private time, not looking for fame and game. A matter of fact, you have asked me not to even mention your names, but you know who you are. And I am so grateful and thankful. And I often tell people when they say, God bless you, Mr. Roberts, I always tell them that the blessings is not mine alone. The blessing comes from far and wide in order to make this happen. What is so unfortunate and sad about that situation is that the country on a whole, the majority of individuals in this country, they have reached the stage where it seems as though that there is no hope. And the reason why there is no hope is because there is no opportunity. And when there is no opportunity, it spells out that there is no employment. It spells out that this country heading down the road to be a country of dependency. And I often wonder how just a couple years ago you were able to stand on your own 2 feet. And now the government has brought you to the point where you are not just doing as the lake asphalt workers and kneeling with your hands up in the air and actually begging the Creator to send down manna from above. The lake asphalt workers were kneeling with their hands in the air and begging God, begging the Supreme Being to send down manna, send their wages so that they can provide for their families, that they could have food to eat. This, ladies and gentlemen, and early next year, we will bring you some facts on the pitch lake, because I know that there is a myth that is going around that the UNC sold the pitch lake to China. And I will bring the facts to you with that early next year. That bunch of P&M idiotic talk that people talk by the side of the road, we go straighten that out. But this lake asphalt, these workers were begging. Could you imagine men and women on their knees and praying to God to help them to receive what they had already worked for? I want you to look at that, as we review this year, because we have a lot of review to come throughout this week. But just concentrate on this group of people that you seeing there on your screen, who is praying and pleading and begging the Creator to help them to get what they had already worked for, so that they could eat and that the children could have milk, that their sons and daughters could have bread, a plate of food. When a government, ladies and gentlemen, when any employer, private or in the public sector, could bring you to the point as those Lake Asphalt workers, it tells you that your employer, that your ministers, that your prime minister is not only wicked and evil, but they are also a bunch of heartless individuals. When a government, ladies and gentlemen, in 2018 could take up a whole oil company, which was the backbone of not only your country, but also your economy. An oil company where your country, as a result of Bazde Pandey, putting in motion a fund that would be your savings, that we call the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, a fund that would be your security, which money from the energy sector would have filtered into that savings. And a government who have not contributed one black penny to that fund would mash up, break up, and close down that company without considering all the intricacies that would occur as a result of their error. Not only destroying that fund, ladies and gentlemen, but also destroying all the fence line communities and constituencies, destroying a large catchment of investors, destroying the service companies, destroying the contractors, destroying the workers, destroying the trade schools, destroying your life and your livelihood, crushing one of its only kind in the Caribbean, the People's Refinery, mashing up all the downstream products that would have been available at a particular cost because of our heritage. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you are without sustenance because of a government action. But what would have caused this action? What would have caused a government to destroy, to break up, to shut down, to close down? The thing that built your country. Was it because, ladies and gentlemen, that the energy sector, that Petrotrin was bankrupt? Was it because, ladies and gentlemen, that Petrotrin could not pay its bills? Or was it because of mass government funds and financiers corruption? We have seen, ladies and gentlemen, that fishermen and friends of the sea, man of business, had applied to the Freedom of Information, and under the Freedom of Information Act, information was provided that what your Prime Minister was saying to you was nothing but blatant lies. Documentation surfaced from the Freedom of Information where Petrotrin even made a profit in 2018 while your Prime Minister was saying to you that the government was not going to get rid of the entity that you call Petrotrin. While he was saying that to you, ladies and gentlemen, your prime minister had already made preparations to close the doors of your goodly Petrotrin, which you, the people of this country, will continue to pay a dreadful price because of your support for Keith Rowley, and because you have failed to recognize evil when evil stands before you.
Victor,
ladies and gentlemen,
just doing some research there as to the reasons why Petrotrin was closed. And I was looking back at a lot of reports in the media. And would you believe a lot of agencies, aided and supported by the media, was pushing reasons why the government should have closed down Petrotrin. So the government does its things, and they get these able and willing agencies whom they financially support or give contracts to push in the media that the closing of Petrotrin was a good thing.
So we'll come back to that. When you, ladies and gentlemen, fail to recognize evil, when you, ladies and gentlemen, supports evil, what is the result that you would expect? Do you believe that a grape tree or a grapevine would be able to produce orange? Do you believe that a cashew tree will bear mangoes? Do you believe that you will see a citrus tree bringing forth apples? So if you ain't believe all that, how today you believe that Rowley is good for Trinidad and Tobago? Your oil company, your refinery, wells that is abandoned today in Highwoods, in Palo Seco, Kurakori, Faizabad, Point 14, Penal, Barapo, and other areas. Wells that you would not be able to find just now until either the bullplug and the valve rotten out, where you may very well starting to see oil and gas hundreds of feet in the air. Wells that farm out companies continue to hook up flow lines and just reaping the benefit. Just hook up flow lines, well, that were producing, that farm out companies throughout the length and breadth, just hooking up flow line without any gauger to witness, without any contractors to walk and check the lines to see who is pulling oil from lines that they are not authorized to pull, but they're bidding in millions and millions of your money, while you sit down, while you cannot provide food for your holiday, for your Christmas, for your Boxing Day, while the new year will continue to look old to you. They reaping the benefit. Your company, ladies and gentlemen, that you believe that the government is the owner. You have allowed yourself to be brainwashed so badly in this country that you don't even know that the oil company of this country, you are the owners. You have allowed yourself to be so brainwashed in this country that you don't even know the resources of the country. You are the owners. But instead of that, you sit as slave to those who you have elected to manage your affair on your behalf. And you doesn't even have the fortitude to stand up and say, look, you people not managing in the interest of we the people, and it's time for you to be fired. Or you don't even have that fortitude. There's a common word for that I can't use on the program. But all who does play cricket, tennis, basketball, and football and things will know the word that I'm talking about. All you don't even have that. All you have none. So all you can't even stand up and say, hey, what is happening here? A matter of fact, all you in this country behave like toothless bulldog. All you behave like toothless bulldogs. We have seen allegations of fake oil. You know what is fake oil? I often try to analyze what is fake oil. And if you just take the word from the top of your brain, you could say, boy, it have nothing like fake oil now. It should not have been fake oil. It really supposed to be no oil. Fake oil still give you a connotation to say, well, look, there is something other than oil. So everybody fake oil, fake oil. But it wasn't fake oil, it was no oil. Better word, no oil. So we have seen an investigation. We have seen 2 foreign consultants came to this country, conduct scientific investigation. And today, to date, we still waiting to hear what is the end result. But I could tell you what you know so far as we review. What we reviewing here this afternoon is that you have no refinery. What we reviewing here today is that you have no petrotrin. What we reviewing here today is millions of dollars had paid for oil that the investigators say, not Victor Roberts, the investigators told us that it never came to Point Up here. It never reached the tank. Hundreds of millions of dollars. What we're reviewing here today is that your Prime Minister took a phone and called his partner. And while on that, I want to ask the Prime Minister a question. I want to ask the Prime Minister if he ever overnight down in San Francisco. I want to ask him that question as we on that. I want to ask the Prime Minister if he ever sleep. I'm going to make it easier. Down in San Francisco. And I want to ask him if he slept in San Francisco, if everything that goes with sleeping was provided for him. I want to ask him that. Boy, this country is so rotten. This government so rotten and nasty that I don't know how you people cannot smell the scent of this government. I don't know how you can smell the scent of this government. First, this government stinking. But all you can smell that. Because all you don't want to smell that. Because all this, it seems like all you like the smell. A whole company gone, vanish, disappear in this country simply because of serious allegations of misconduct, which involves serious government ministers, which involve serious prime minister friends, which involves the future, the detriment to your children's future, the hardship, the pain, agony, and suffering that you will have to prepare to go through going forward from 2022 into 2023, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and following. And yet, to the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it seems that all you ain't smelling the stink in this government. Men and women, boys and girls, citizens of this Twin Island Republic, this Keith Rowley administration it is death to your future. We have seen an arbitration that took place where a senior counsel, Deborah Peake, who was hired by Petrotrin, Deborah Peake, ladies and gentlemen, represented your interests. Coming out of your interests, ladies and gentlemen, after every drilling were able to appoint an arbiter, while Rowley partner, Rowley lawyer, Rowley anointed chairman appoint another arbiter, and then both of them get together and appoint the third arbiter. When the guidelines were set out according to Deborah Peake report, Deborah Peake tell this country, tell Petrotrin, tell Kwamwena, tell Stuart Young, tell Franklin Khan, tell Rowley, tell Alwari, tell the whole cabinet that according to law, the arbiters which is the only ground for you to appeal an arbitration. The only ground. Added to that, she also emphasized that the government, that Petrotrin, that Kwamena, that they act swiftly in order to prevent the time, the duration of time to expire, so that you, the people of the country, would get justice for your oil company. I remember Saddam Hussein stand up in the parliament and ask Keith Rowley under the question and answer segment. Saddam Hussein asks, Prime Minister, would the government or did the government follow the advice of Deborah Peake and appeal the decision based on the ground that is in the Deborah Peake report? Your Prime Minister stood up in the parliament and your Prime Minister tell you that that is a matter for Petrotrin, not the government. A state-owned oil company as Petrotrin, a state-owned. Your Prime Minister appoint Michael Commoner as the chairman. But your Prime Minister stand up and tell the parliament and tell you that that is a matter for Petrotrin. So while it was a matter for Petrotrin to appeal the decision of the arbiters, I want to ask Rowley today why it was you as Prime Minister who called a vigilance to find out what this is about according to your statement on the public domain. So it wasn't a matter for Petrotrin back then when AV name jump up in Bacchanal. It wasn't a matter for Petrotrin back then to do what it have to do in order to get justice. It was you, the Prime Minister, who intervened, just as you did with the meritless. It was you, Prime Minister Rowley, that took your phone from in a foreign jurisdiction and called A&V to ask him, according to you, what this is what I hear in here about fake oil. But when Deborah Peake said to appeal the judgment, you stand up and tell the country, we out of that. That is a matter for Petrotrin. But it wasn't a matter for Petrotrin. When you call and interfere, when you put your big bald-head mouth inside it and interfere, it wasn't a matter for Petrotrin. And the people of this country swallow that like a good tablet. That is the level of evil that is before you today. That is the level of evil that you support. So don't vex when you have nothing to eat. Don't cry when you can't send your children to school. Don't vex when you can't pay a bill. And don't vex when they implement property tax come January on you. Take it. Take it without asete. And if you don't know what asete really means, you could ask the Spanish. That is what all you support. So the whole company mash up. The whole refinery gone down the drain. The whole of your heritage and stabilization fund jumping up by the hands of Imbot, Rowley, Stuart Young, Faris, jumping up. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Faris walked out the cabinet chambers and money came tumbling after. That is how the thing going. Just walk out the cabinet chamber. And all in favor say, aye, 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 aye. All in favor, I understand inside there, it doesn't have nothing like near, you know. It's only all in favor. And that's the end of the topic. Everybody eating, everybody drinking except you. You just sit down in this country and allow things to happen. I want to invite the attorney at law, Kyle Taklal Singh, to the head table. And while he come to the head table, we will continue to review, but I will shift from the line that I on. Welcome, attorney. Nice to have you as usual. Mike on that side. While we shift a little bit as we continue to review, I want to use the opportunity because we're going until 8 o'clock. We ain't going until 9. 8 o'clock, we out of here. So I want to review now, but we're switching the review because for the rest of the week, we will be dealing with all the different aspects as much as we can for the time allotted to us in terms of the review. And before I just allow Kyle to introduce himself, which is no stranger to us, we have things like the $3 million painting to talk about. We have the 0.5 million soca on the sea. We have the CL financial sex harassment. All remember that? That is with a man by the name of Balgobin, a doctor man. All remember that issue? We have plenty of things to talk about. We had the Trump phone call that caused this country $16 million. We had the Torubia Stadium, $130 million overrun. We have the toilet paper factory loan, $30 million. We had the trade union hush money. Why some of the trade union can't catch yourself today, the $15 million. We still have the Massey Communication, the $225 million. Well, we just was talking about fake oil. We have Kobo Star mobilization. We have that's 13 million free. We had the Ocean Flower mobilization, 20 million. We had the repairs to the Trinidad and Tobago Spirit, 60 million. We had the 1.2 billion for 4 boats. We had the 1.7 million for no work. We had the 23 million. We have so much that we could talk about that it ain't funny. But as we have the attorney with us here this afternoon, I want to at least get into the review of 3 things. One, the review of the fraternity that he belongs to, the Law Association. We want to review the Law Association decisions. We want to also review the Nelson Gate. And the third review we want, and he could take it in any sequence he want, is the Lion Attorney General who gone on holiday from today. And they put Stuart Young to act. So that the 3 things we will touch on for the time allotted. We will leave the president and the meritless. No term for the president. No term. Well, I want to talk to him after the show, you know. Because I want to find out if when the president come out of office, because I heard, you know, the president caused me great pain with the mashing up of this police service commission. Great pain. So I want to know what I could do. Because I couldn't do nothing when she was saying no on the chair. But as she come out from the chair, I want to have some discussion to find out what action I could take for what occurred with the meritless in this country. So I go rest that for now. Welcome, Attorney at law, my friend, my brother. I know for a fact that you are not of the few that celebrate this big Christmas and all that. I know that we had discussions over the holidays, and you said you were taking it easy because you were really thinking about the people who could not afford to really put a food on the table, to even say to the children Merry Christmas. And I really appreciate that stand you took. While you might have been able to buy a ham, a turkey or whatever, you decided to just take it easy and just spend a little time and stretch your imagination onto those who could not provide. So I really want to congratulate you on that stand.
Well, thank you very much, Victor. And of course, I suppose even if we wanted to do something, 600 murders and the way that the crime situation is in Trinidad and Tobago, it used to be the safest place you could be is your house, but it's no longer even that.
Yeah.
Then that's just the situation as it is now, you know. But for those who do celebrate Christmas, I mean, I do celebrate it to some extent. So for those who did, you know, we wish you a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, etc. Or you and all your viewers, Victor, a safe and holy season, as they say. Well, you know, here is three bombshells that we had this year.
Yeah.
The first of all, first and I think one of the most serious issues our country has ever faced, if not the worst scandal, is the Nelson Gate scandal. Then you had this AG Amo debacle which took place, which was the subject of a no confidence motion. And then, of course, generally you have crime and issue, but you were also talking about something when I walked in about the failure to appeal the AV drilling matter.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, you know, and I don't comment on the merits of the case or whatever, but with the amount of money at play, one would have thought that you would listen to your lawyer, senior counsel, Ms. Peake, Deborah Peake, and appeal. And we saw recently, Victor, where the state was willing to appeal a decision from WASA. You remember that one?
Yep,
I don't know if you mentioned it.
No, I didn't.
All the way to the Privy Council. Yes. They fought these two people, I think it's an elderly couple, fought Mr. Larry Lala and his juniors. You know, what really is, you know, should not have been a case that you should be fighting all the way to the Privy Council. Water in a main undermined a house. The first instance judge gave a ruling. Why not settle the matter? I'm sure they would have negotiated, even if you felt you had to save all money. They thought they were claiming too much. A house didn't cost $2 million. Well, put in an offer. Let's see what happens. But you appeal these people all the way. They had to wait, I think it was 10 years. And they still haven't got their money. 10 years. I don't know if they're living somewhere else, if they're renting. You know, what could be the situation? Very unfortunate. And every time this government loses a case in court, appeal. They want to appeal. Jawala Rambaran, appeal. I won a case recently against Minister Imbert for the then deputy head of, or commissioner of Inland Revenue, where she was bypassed. They want to appeal that too. Everything, appeal. Instead of talking, instead of thinking, instead of negotiating and trying to resolve the issue. Because even though sometimes as a lawyer I have a case that I lose, and I want to appeal. It's not every time you go and you tell your client, shell out a couple, you know, a lot of money to appeal. Think about the case. Is it worth it? Is there anything to benefit out of appealing? Really, is there a benefit? Sometimes you just have to pack up your bags and go. And I really can't understand why, though, with that kind of approach, they didn't follow the advice. Because recently there was a big arbitration in the country. Arbitrators ruled in the OAS government matter. Right. Arbitrators ruled, the government appealed and they won. So they won the appeal. And now whether or not OAS appeals again, that could go on and on. So what was the selective handling? Why the decision not to appeal in AV drilling? That is something that I think the government has to explain fully. I haven't seen the legal opinion. I do know that there is a legal opinion that was reported by Ms. Deborah Peake. So one really has to question, what is the legal policy of this government? Is it really that they're serving the people? Is it really the Attorney General's office, because you've had two of them now? Is it really that the Attorney General's office is serving the people of this country, trying to save taxpayers' money? Or is it that when the government look bad, you appeal, and when they're not looking so bad, you leave it? Or when it suits them? That's not the way an Attorney General's office should function. An Attorney General's office should function for the benefit of the people. You appeal cases on merit. You appeal cases that you think will benefit society. Because a judge, even though a judge may be wrong, a judge is still a judge. You know? He may be wrong on some technical area of law at the High Court. But he's still a judge. He's given you a learned opinion. Maybe you should look at it, think about it, and say, well, all right, even though I disagree with this in a minute kind of way, do I need to spend millions of dollars to appeal a matter that in the end may not be worth it? So that's something I thought that was important to your discussion.
Yeah. Still on the discussion. When you look at all that transpired in terms of that Petrotrin issue and the interference with the Prime Minister from the early stage by the way of his phone calls and so on, I think it would have even be a good, let me take back that. I think it would have been better for the government to intervene and not telling us that it's a matter for Petrotrin while you appoint the board of Petrotrin.
Yeah.
While the chairman of the board will have to report to your line minister.
Yes.
Your line minister will have to report to you and the cabinet.
Yes.
So I think it's just plain smart with foolishness when the prime minister would stand up in the parliament and say that is not a matter for the government, but it's a matter for the board.
But that's just ridiculous, because let's look at it. You have state entities. Some are set up by act of parliament. So, for instance, you have the regional health authorities. They're set up by an act of parliament. There are some that are set up under the Companies Act, etc. You have Petrotrin that is set up with a board of directors. Yes, corporate governance tells you that the board of directors should exercise independent discretion and thought as to what to do. But what if the board of directors of, let's say, NGC decide, you know what, let me close up this gas business? Don't you think the minister would intervene? Of course he would, because the minister has ultimate responsibility for the state enterprises and can give specific and general direction to those boards. The boards are there to carry out government policy.
Right.
So if the government's policy was to close down Petrotrin, the board had to carry it out. If it was the government's policy to fight and prosecute and to find justice in the EV drilling matter, then the board would have to continue to carry out that. And the board would not be doing so without support, because it had a legal opinion saying to appeal. It was wholly and totally inappropriate for the Prime Minister to contact the person whose interest is adverse to Petrotrin, let's put it like that, the person at the center of the issue, to ask him to get his version. Because in that scenario, you should have taken a hands-off approach, even if it's your partner. The point is, you say, listen, conflict, lawyer, conflict lawyer, go and get your lawyers, let your lawyers advise you. And we go take a drink down the road and we wouldn't discuss that. But he admitted to the nation that he spoke about the matter with him, and that was wholly inappropriate, because any information you receive as Prime Minister to take decisions on this matter ought to have come to you through the channels, through the board, through your line minister, and then to you in a report. It's documented by cabinet note, and the cabinet takes a decision. You can have some special information that you got from a third party that the cabinet doesn't know about, and you may or may not be trying to influence decisions. I don't know. But the point is to avoid that and insulate yourself. Proper governance would dictate that you have no discussion with the gentleman on the issue. And that is just good governance. And it seems that good governance is alien to this PNM government.
But let me ask you a question right inside there. Who would have the responsibility in a matter where one believes that conflict arises based on the phone call? Would it be the Commissioner of Police?
Well, certainly if there is a suspicion that the conversation between the Prime Minister and the head of AV drilling could be perceived to influence the Prime Minister wrongly or to make decisions that are adverse to the interests of the public, then certainly police ought to investigate it. Unfortunate for the police there that you already have nowhere to investigate. You would ask the Prime Minister what he said, he will give you a watered-down version. You ask the gentleman what he said, he will give you a watered-down version. Police really have nothing to go on. But the point is, from a corporate governance standpoint, it is, from a governance standpoint, it's wrong. And we have to understand that democracy, the rule of law, and a country is not only held up by laws on your law books. There's something called conventions and practices, right? For instance, when a scandal happens to a minister or a member of parliament in England, the convention is that he resigns. You saw Boris Johnson having to resign because he was involved in a massive scandal. There's no law in England saying he has to resign, you know. Right. That if you were investigated, you have to. There's no law saying that. That is a mature democracy with norms, values, and conventions saying that if there are serious, strong, and well-established allegations against you, then you ought to step aside. So you can't pick and choose conventions. You can't come here and say we run a parliamentary democracy and a Westminster system, but you ignore those types of conventions. In the same way, the Prime Minister ought to take stock and understand that he simply cannot pick up the phone and call who he wants to talk about government business, especially a matter that is coming before the cabinet. That's not the way it works.
You know, as I make that point, in our jurisdiction, when there is serious allegation, whether it be against a police officer, magistrate, judge, we have where they are placed on suspension pending the outcome.
Yeah.
But why that doesn't work for ministers? When there is serious allegations about ministers, whether it be a 4.4 million, whether it be a 143,800, how come these people are allowed to sit in their office, perform their duty, when it comes to the politicians? I mean, why? What is it to say that some law needs to be reviewed as we're going forward in this country, or
well,
is it to say that
it's not a law, it's just poor leadership.
All right.
If as a leader you have people who are responsible for major portfolios sitting with you and under you, and there are allegations of criminal or other types of allegations against them, then there are ways to deal with it. One of the ways you deal with it is to investigate it. But while you're investigating, you may ask them to step aside, you may ask them to stand down, or you may ask them to resign until it's resolved. That was something, I think, that may have been taken to the extreme under the People's Partnership, right? Where you had, in my view, very fickle allegations, but you had man being thrown out of the cabinet, right? Or being asked to resign. That may be the standard, and it's a good standard. And people have gone away; they've cleared their names. Mr. Roberts is one of them, in my view, right? Clear their names and come back, and so be it, right? He took the long course, but you see, it can't be one rule for one and one rule for the other. But that people must understand that there are some things the laws cannot fix. There are some things that your voting finger must fix. And that is a difference in leadership, and that is a difference in party. I have always said the United National Congress is the party of the rule of law. We are the party that respects our rule of law. Go and read the United National Congress Constitution. Mm-hmm. One of the things we affirm our belief in is the rule of law and upholding rule of law and struggling against dictatorial tendencies. That is in our Constitution. So when you subscribe to the UNC, you subscribe to that.
Yeah.
And by subscribing to that, you are not subscribing to that PNM, mess that takes place where you have all these allegations and they sit down there normal, because the rule of law requires the public to have confidence in your leadership structure. And if you have all these allegations, I don't know, is there a minister now in the cabinet that you could say there's no allegation of either gross incompetence, gross negligence, or downright misfeasance against? I mean, let me go through now. There's a recap, right? let me go through. Imbert, totally incompetent, worst budget of the year. Amor, well, oh God. Let me just start there, right?
Yeah,
a whole fiasco, right? Next minister, we have again. Rohan Senaran. Well, we just see what's going on with Rohan Senaran.
So before you go to Rohan and all of them, we just go straight to the top. And I was laughing when we talk about, when you say poor leadership, and we could ask this one and that one to step aside when there is allegations. But when you have serious allegations, as we do against the Prime Minister, I mean, where are we going from there?
Well, the way to get rid of our Prime Minister is through elections. That's just the system we have. We don't have the right of recall in our Constitution as of today. But elections are triggered not only by the elapse of time or the effluxion of time. Elections are triggered by public pressure. And of course, one of the ways we wanted to do that is by starting our march. We wouldn't talk about that because that might be headed other places now. Yeah. But public pressure forces an election. We had a PNM government that fell 2.5 years into government. And nobody could ever say that. One thing you can't say about Prime Minister Manning is that he was a weak man or incompetent man. He was a very strong, competent, bright man. His government was just in a state in an irreparable state at that point. There were several scandals surrounding the government, and he was forced to call an election, and it could happen again.
But less scandal than what we're facing today.
Oh, by far.
So let's get in straight to the the Law Association as we recap it.
Yeah. Well, the Attorney General.
I mean, I am tempted to ask a question, but common sense.
Is the NIA our lawyer? Ask the question. If I can't, I can't.
But
ask the question.
I think common sense will guide me in the way in which.
Listen, you have freedom of speech.
I'll put this question.
Speech don't have to be perfect. We go work it out.
So I'll put it in this way. From your experience this year with the association that you belong to, I mean, how you feel based on the fact that we had this classic case of the Attorney General, and I know for a fact that you were quite instrumental in putting the whole team together in terms of
no confidence,
getting the motion prepared in order to really show that there is a lack of confidence, or a matter of fact that the association should not have any confidence in the behavior of the Attorney General. How you feel today?
Well, I want to be clear, and I think I've said it before. There is a difference between the law association and the legal profession. The law association is like, let's say, the cabinet of the legal profession. About 10 or 14 people who are elected by the wider legal profession. All lawyers, once you pay fees, you get together, you vote, and you vote a president, who is currently Ms. Sophia Choate, senior counsel, and 14 representatives. And that is the law association. That is the council of the law association, who takes decisions on behalf of the law association, the body that is the law association. You have the wider legal profession. The law association did not take a position, or the council of the law association did not take a position on the Amor issue. And I felt that they were moving too slow to take a position, and therefore I drafted a motion to summon a meeting of the entire profession. At that point, when the entire profession was about to meet, I think it was quite right that the council didn't make a statement, because they didn't want to influence either way.
Right.
The entire body was now going to come to make a decision, if you were interested. The council sometimes makes statements on its own. So for Nelson Gate scandal, they came out with what I thought was a good statement, where they essentially condemned the agreement, they criticized it, they spoke about why are you undermining Parliament, etc., etc. That was not the wider profession making that statement. That was the council, and it is expected that the council will reflect the views of the wider profession, right? So there's a little distinction there. Insofar as the, let's call it the AG Amor affair goes, the Miami Gate, as some say, I am disappointed in the seniors of the legal profession, because while you had a bunch of young, dynamic lawyers coming forward to support this motion, to protect their profession and the image of their profession, because it is we, the younger lawyers, that have to practice for the next 30, 40 years, God sparing health. We have to face the public on a day-to-day basis. We have to earn our money from the public on a day-to-day basis. And that requires a level of trust between us and the public.
Right.
A lot of these senior counsels who spoke, with all due respect to them, you know, they're made in the profession. They're senior counsel, they have earned fees, they have enough savings and future brief and past brief, I'm sure, to carry them for the rest of their lives. Yet those are the ones that came out and defended what was an indefensible position. You had one senior attorney saying, well, we should excuse him because of a European hotel room situation. The room was too small. You had another senior counsel who came out and defended him and said, well, he had done all these cases in the past and he's a good boy. You know, I hate to be crude and say the good boy defense, but he was a good lawyer and in the past he defended human rights, so let's give him a pass. That has nothing to do with what happened, and I said it at the meeting. I have no personal animus or hate towards Mr. Amor. Mr. Amor holds a position. he holds the position as titular or representative head of the legal profession. Your conduct has to be impeccable,
correct,
and your conduct must inspire confidence in the population, in the legal profession. When you blatantly make misrepresentations on an affidavit, you could only either be sorely mistaken, or you were misled. He did not say he was misled. He didn't come and say anybody fool him and make him do that affidavit. An affidavit was presented to him. He had the opportunity to read it. He had the opportunity to call and check and see if the facts were accurate. And it is clear that the affidavit did not represent the truth of the matter. And there's no excuse for lying in court. And I want people to understand why the affidavit issue was so important. Why it was so important is because the affidavit evidence is the heart of the justice system. Because how do you prove your case in court? You have to bring evidence. You have to swear affidavits or witness statements. If it is we are going to excuse misrepresentations and affidavits and witness statements, then what are judges supposed to say? Right? What are judges supposed to tell a witness? You have some land case and you're going to swear an affidavit and the judge say, oh well, this is not quite true because you put this, but this document says different. Sometimes you have an innocent explanation, you know. You might have forget, but that is held against you in the judgment. Because when the judge comes out with the judgment, he say, this is a material inconsistency and for which I must find against the claimant. That's the language, and that is the standard we hold ourselves to as lawyers. As a lawyer, I have to ensure that the instructions I take from my client is accurate. I can't tell the truth, but I have to make sure that as far as I am satisfied, you're not lying to a court. That is the obligation of a lawyer, much less when you have a senior counsel, you have a senior member of the bar, you have the attorney general, you have the second in command of the cabinet and the country, swearing a very simple affidavit, which was completely misrepresented. And in my view, and the reason we brought that motion, it undermined the rule of law, it undermined the administration of justice, and it undermined the public's confidence in a profession which I love, the legal profession. And the legal profession is a very, very important profession to any country. We stand as guardians of the rule of law and democracy. And if you don't see yourself as a lawyer protecting civil rights, not everybody does human right and constitutional case, but all lawyers advise the population of their legal rights. And if you don't know your legal rights, you will be abused by public authorities in this country. And that is why the legal profession is very important. So getting back to the question, you asked me how I feel. I feel very disappointed in the inner bar of the country. Not every senior counsel, but I feel very disappointed in the inner bar. The inner bar is what you call the senior counsels, right? I felt that no senior counsel really stood up to condemn it, even though I'm sure many of them thought it was wrong. And I am very disappointed that many senior counsel defended that which was indefensible. And when you really, it's unfortunate that the transcript of that hearing was not made public. I think some lawyers wrote for it, but they didn't get it. But it's very unfortunate because I think the population should look at that transcript and see the kind of defenses that these senior counsel put up and these senior members of the bar put up. They would be extremely disappointed, as I am. But what I take away from it, because I think just today in the papers there was an article, it was about 230 or 40 votes in favor and about 320 or 30 votes against. That's not a large margin, right? That's not a large margin. And I think what I take heart from is a lot of the profession, a significant number of the profession, was willing to come out, stand up, and do the right thing. And that is why I still have faith in the legal profession and in the law association, even though I might disappoint. You know, I think it was Pandey who once said, you're vexed with somebody, but you don't put them out your house, right? You're vexed with the pastor, you don't step out the church. It's the same way. I could be upset with the seniors in the profession and with some lawyers in the profession, but I'm still going to work on convincing them as to what is the right thing to do.
So be that as it may, from the standpoint of the association within the fraternity,
Yeah.
how you felt going forward, seeing that the Prime Minister who ought to not only operate within the confines of the law, but who should also seek to have individuals who he appoint in high positions such as the office of the Attorney General. Don't you think that the Prime Minister owes a duty to the country to ensure that persons who he appointed in these positions is persons who are without blame, so to speak, even after the incident of what transpired while the Attorney General sits in office, even though it's in another jurisdiction, but the fact remains is, even though it's another jurisdiction, he still represented Trinidad and Tobago out there. So while he may have to answer out there, because I don't know, as he go on holidays or he out of the country, I don't know if he going to answer, I don't know if the Americans summon him, I don't know. But the point I'm making is this: how you consider this situation where the Prime Minister would do absolutely nothing in relation to keep that sort of high merit within the office of the Attorney General, seeing the Attorney General not only is in the second in command, not only he represent the law fraternity, but because of that office.
Well, I think that's two things. One, it's leadership. It's a hallmark of leadership that you identify talent and you appoint the right persons in the right places, and that you are able to ensure that the offices that you command or the offices that you lead continue to be run with integrity. And the only way that you could ensure that it's run with integrity is if you have persons of integrity and good reputation and competence in those offices to carry on the affairs. When you have a Prime Minister or any leader, I'm the head of, I'm a sort of leader in my chambers, my law chamber. I have a lot of young lawyers who work under me. I don't go and inspect everybody's work on a day-to-day like it's a primary school. I have to say, open your copybook, let me read. I've appointed competent lawyers to different matters, different portfolios. I assess their ability and I know where you could have them, where you can't have them, what kind of matter they could work on, what kind of matter they can't work on. And I assist them and guide them. And that's really what a leader of any sort should do. And therefore, if you have a Prime Minister with members of cabinet, I would expect that the Prime Minister would choose an Attorney General who is his second in command. You don't have a cabinet unless you have an Attorney General. Now, you can't fault, I don't think you could have faulted the Prime Minister for initially choosing Mr. Reginald Amor.
Agree.
But with this scandal becoming exposed so quickly, and the ripple effect that it had throughout society, I don't have to tell you, I don't have to say it. Anytime Reginald Amor says something or puts out a statement, go and look at the comments as to what the population thinks about him and the nickname the population has for him. The public has no confidence in him as Attorney General. The public has no confidence in the office of the Attorney General, especially now, which has been compounded with his Nelson Gate affair, which we'll talk about. Mm-hmm. So as the Prime Minister wanting to restore, well, there are two things. If you want to restore confidence in the government and the office of the Attorney General, call an election. That way the United National Congress could come into power and we could restore good governance to public office. But that aside, let's put the politics out of it. If you are a leader there and you're doing what you had to do, he has to remove the Attorney General. Has to remove the Attorney General. In my view, that Attorney General continues to tarnish the office of Attorney General. I saw one media outlet today saying that he's escaped. He has not escaped. The population has no confidence in him, in my respectful view. He has tarnished the office and he needs to step down and resign, or the Prime Minister needs to fire him. That is too important an office to have someone that is tarnished there. When there were allegations about Mr. Ram Logan, that very Attorney General was then the president of the Law Association and wrote a very stinging press release for Mr. Ram Logan to be fired. So I can't understand now with these allegations against him why he wouldn't step down. But you see, one day for them, one law for them, one vote for us.
Yeah.
And that must stop. And it's not that we're going to lower ourselves, but they must lift themselves.
Added to that, it bring back to my recollection the scenario with the Chief Justice, where there was allegations against the Chief Justice, which, as far as I'm concerned, still hangs over his head.
Well, it's unresolved. And
right?
Again, that was our position. You're right. That again is another scenario of leadership. You failed in the Attorney General dimension. Here you have the head of the judiciary, the head of the law, of the dispensation of law and arbitration of law in our country, the Chief Justice, with serious allegations against him, brought by no other than the Law Association, who at that time the president was Douglas Mendes, right? Douglas Mendes brought those allegations, meaning when I say he brought it, he was the president at the time.
Right.
And he would have obviously felt it fit that these allegations should have gone to the Prime Minister with a recommendation for him to consider instituting a tribunal. And the Prime Minister's response to that was very, base and banal and puerile. Oh, it have UNC members in the Law Association. So we had to take him to court, and we won that case. And the court told him, remove that from your consideration and reconsider. And he said, well, okay, yeah, I'm going to reconsider. And he came back with the same result. Foolish. That was a clear indication. And the way to vindicate the rule of law, when I say vindicate, the way to restore confidence in the population at that point was to have the investigation. It was not a charge. It was not a condemnation. It was not a finding of guilt. It was to simply appoint someone, more than likely a senior judge from the UK, to look into these allegations and clear the Chief Justice, or find that there's sufficient to take proceedings against him. And he would have had another layer of protection. They did that with Chief Justice Sharma. And that has been found, and he was cleared by the Mustel Tribunal, even though he was hounded out of office. He was cleared by the Mustel Tribunal. He was cleared in the Magistrate Court. And his reputation has been saved forever. Unfortunately, he was hounded out of office, and then we got Chief Justice Archie now, and I think, quite frankly, that he is unfit to be Chief Justice as long as he has those allegations hanging over his head. And that's my position on it.
So, Trinidad and Tobago, what's your thought on it? What's your thought on it? And we are just looking back at some of the damning allegations that continue to exist from the Law Association standpoint, in terms of the Chief Justice, the Attorney General, and also the Prime Minister. Yeah. There were serious allegations against the Prime Minister
and this President.
Serious allegations against the President. So what is needed in this country, it has to be an election.
Yeah.
It has to be an election, because you cannot have all the major players in terms of democracy in the country, and there's allegations from Tom, Dick, Harry, Lucy, and Patsy, and to the end of the day, life just goes on. The Prime Minister just continue to do whatever he feels to do, whether it be right or wrong, whether it be constitutional or not. We just have, and we could go further, even the Speaker of the House.
Both.
There is also, both of them.
Both presiding officers.
There's also allegations. So where are we going from here in this country? Where are we going? And that is a fact. And that is one of the reasons why we will continue to perish, because I am telling you, under those circumstances, foreign investors will not come to the soil of this country, because there is no trust. There is no trust in any institution. And when there is no trust in any institution, what would you expect to happen? The Prime Minister, I'll comment to you, the Prime Minister himself, we have the Inez Gate situation. We have the interfering of the meritless situation. We have the the integrity form situation. So where are we going? Where are we really going, Kyle? Where are we going in this country?
I was just about to tell you, there's a famous book that people must read and look at. Not How Democracies Died. There's another one called Why Nations Fail. It was written about maybe 8 years ago. And the authors of that book, some historians and economists, what they said is that nations fail when independent institutions are not open, transparent, and fair. And that is what causes institutions to, countries to fail. And they, of course, compared, I believe it was North Korea versus South Korea, and a real interesting book. But the takeaway from that is that in Trinidad, we are headed to failed nation state because each institution in our country is no longer fair, they're no longer transparent, they're no longer pluralistic is the word that they use, they're no longer democratic. Let's take the institutions one by one. Parliament is gone. Parliament is essentially now a place for the government to talk at you. When you look how the presiding officers run Parliament, it is atrocious. They don't allow free speech, they don't allow free debate, and they protect the government from parliamentary scrutiny, meaning the opposition are not allowed to scrutinize the government in the way that they should. We have very good efforts, don't get me wrong. The opposition parliamentarians, they do an excellent job, but they work, they basically bring in a knife to a gunfight, right? And that can't be right. Let's take another institution, the judiciary. The last survey or census that they did in the judiciary, it was like 27% of the population has confidence in the judiciary. And just by comparison, I think in England it's somewhere 70%, right? So you have a population, 20-something% has confidence in the judiciary. Yeah. What is the judiciary for? The judiciary is there to settle conflict among citizens. So if only a small amount of the population believe they could get justice in the court, you know where they're going to get justice? On the street. And that is one of the reasons we have this crime problem. And that is why our nation is failing, right? Attorney General's office. Well, we talk about that. Nelson Gate, Amor Gate. Failed. President's office. The President's office is a very important office, People talk about it being ceremonial, and I don't quite share that view because the President, even though she herself does not exercise power, she appoints persons who exercise power. She appoints the public service commissions, the police service commission. So she could wield influence there. She appoints the chief justice. She appoints independent, well, I don't call them independent senators. She appoints senators to the Senate, right? That are supposed to be independent. Correct. Right? And she makes a number of other appointments to public service. I believe she appoints Integrity Commission to her as well. Those are very important institutions. And if your president is compromised, or if your president has no integrity, or if your president has been shown to collude with the government to undermine institutions, then that president and that office has also failed. So that's another institution that is gone. The police service is another institution in our country that is gone because the head of the police, we don't have a head of the police service. And without a head, if you cut off the head of a snake, the snake dies. I'm not saying the police service is a snake, but what I'm saying is, without leadership in the police service, it is floundering. And while you may have good police officers, without a good, stable leader, it is not going to do the job that it is meant to do, which is protect and serve. And it is not going to uphold and protect our constitutional rights, as we saw with our application. The match we'll talk about that another day, right? So, police service, gone. Right? Integrity Commission, toothless bulldog.
Joke.
Police Complaints Division, even though I think there are good people there, they don't have the power to do what they have to do, because at the end of the day, they can't prosecute, they can't charge. Errant police officers. And I think that's one of the things that the next government coming into power needs to look at, giving the police complaints division more teeth to deal with errant police officers. And so you have all these institutions, the central bank, gone. EBC, gone. But we know EBC is our party group, and we know that just looking at that report, we know it's our party group. And the central bank, the central bank is such an important institution in your country. All over the world, central banks are considered to be independent institutions.
Except Trinidad.
Except Trinidad. And there's a good reason for that, a highly technical reason. Ask economists about it. It is the central government that runs fiscal policy, right? And it is the central bank that runs monetary policy. They have to act against and with each other. You can't have one person controlling both because it's conflict. It is a central bank that must fix inflation or deal with inflation by adjusting interest rates. Highly technical. But the point is you need someone independent doing that, because an elected government is going to play politics and not adjust the interest rate and the policy as it needs to do. And we saw where the court has found at first instance that Minister Imbert removed a sitting central bank governor, a very brilliant man in Jawala Rambaran, very, very brilliant man, from central bank governor without any due process, and it was found to be unlawful. And that is interference. They also passed legislation recently where they cut the term of the central bank governor. So I think previously he had 5 years, they cut it to 3. Why would you put someone on a shorter contract?
You see, the government wants to ensure that the persons in those institutions will be able to do the government bidding.
And beholden to them, because
Exactly.
they want your contract renewed.
And that is the same game that they're playing with the police commissioner.
Acting.
That's the same game.
And I'm disappointed now. I want to register. I am disappointed now in the Police Service Commission saying that they need until sometime in January or something like that to appoint a commissioner. But I don't understand how this process is taking so long, you know. I really don't understand. Advertise, assess, and choose. And if the choice isn't good, take the necessary action.
I think one of the things going forward that the government who takes over from this corrupt, wicked, brutal team of people has to also consider different mechanism to appoint these commissions.
Yeah.
I think when you allow the Prime Minister to have some say in terms of choosing and sending for the President to appoint,
Yeah, you have influence.
I think that's a deadly influence.
Well, I want to say you're never going to find the perfect way to deal with it. Ultimately, you have a majority government, and you can't have, it would be wrong to have people appointed who are opposed to your government, because you get nothing done. There are independent institutions that must be run by independent people, but everybody has a bias here and there. So you're never going to get a perfect system. The way the Americans deal with it is that they have Senate confirmations. So there's a political cost to your appointment. You want to appoint somebody. So let's say we want to appoint Archie, the head of an independent institution. We bring him before the Senate, and he has to face question after question after question, confirmation hearing. And the public will have full glare and sight as to whether or not Archie is truly independent or not.
Right.
And if he is tarnished enough, the public pressure, which is part of a democracy, I keep telling people that everything can't be law. A lot of it has to be scrutiny and public pressure. And we need to wake up as a country to our sovereign democratic status and have our say and put public pressure on governments, because governments fear losing power. And if they see a tide rising, they're going to run. They're going to take shelter. So I think one way you could deal with it is having public confirmations. Either you do it through a joint select committee or through a Senate committee, where you have independent officers, before they are appointed, face confirmation hearings, or you have an entirely different system to appoint. You have a wider committee. They always say more people, less chance of bias. So you have maybe a committee of 20 or 30 that makes these recommendations, and then the president chooses, and you could water it down and make an appointment. I think also that you need to look at the administration of justice in this country, the way we appoint and promote judges, the way we deal with the Chief Justice, the way that justice is dispensed. We need a commission of inquiry into the administration of justice in this country. I think that's something that has to be set up as a matter of urgency. The way we appoint senior counsels is something that may have to be looked at as well. So all of these things are important reforms that have to take place for us to fix the institutions which are failing. Whether or not we still want an integrity commission, I don't know what the integrity commission has done for the past 20 years personally. I don't know if they've ever taken anybody to court. The one thing they tried was against Dr. Rowley, incidentally, that I remember, and he was victorious in court because he didn't get a right to be heard, right?
But I remember I had a cup of coffee as somebody went by somebody's house.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other issue, right? So whether we still need an integrity commission or whether we revamp it, it's clearly not fulfilling the mandate that it should. Whether or not we should have the integrity commission armed and fitted to deal with corruption in public office as opposed to the anti-corruption bureau that we have serious questions about, because you have politicians in this country being investigated by the cabinet appointed persons from England, SRP, Kate and friends.
But
right?
added to that, Kyle, I remember at one time I think that this bureau was also a part of the Attorney General.
It was, and I think under the United National Congress, it was moved and put back to the, it was, well, I say it was housed. I don't think it was ever under the AG. But that is influence, so you have to move it. The time has come for an independent body within the police. You could amend the Police Service Act to create an anti-corruption bureau. I also think with that, you need to pass law in this country that if police officers maliciously prosecute citizens, and in particular public officials or politicians, or they prosecute people for political gain, that they would be liable and not taxpayers.
Yeah.
The state could indemnify them, but you must try and get your money from them first, right? So all your pension and things, if you want to use your office to prosecute political opponents of the BNM, you must pay. And I figure if we had that kind of law, you might have a lot of people paying money in the future.
So let me put you on the spot right now.
Yeah.
Would you be able to sit in to continue this conversation on Friday afternoon?
Friday afternoon? Yeah, I have a family commitment on Friday, but I could do something.
All right, because I know we time
At least
out.
At least I call in.
All right, so good. So I know the time is out. I know that I want to respect the people's time with their holidays and so on. I know some people might have to be out to work tomorrow and so on. It's 1 minute to the hour, so we'll take your closing remarks with this 1 minute that is left.
I think we've had a very tumultuous year. I think our independent institutions, they're really buckling under pressure. If not, some of them are already broken. I think it's the duty of each and every citizen of our country to defend those institutions and to stand up, to take the government to court. Lawyers must be brave enough to take those cases, but citizens must not be afraid to speak out, to march, to protest, to do what you have to do, to draw attention, because ultimately it is my belief that power resides in the people. And if we that's what sovereignty means. Sovereignty means not only independence from Britain, it means that each of us have sovereignty over our destiny and our future. And if we as sovereign independent citizens can put pressure on our public institutions, particularly government, we can force change in this country, and we could save this country from the way it is headed.
Thank you very much. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. As we wrap for this evening, I want to thank Attorney at Law Kyle Taklal Singh, who take time off from his busy schedule. I know today that he will up and about putting things in place. We'll give you an up-to-date as time go along within the next couple of days as to where we heading, where we going, and so forth and so forth. So I want to say thank you very much for allowing us to intrude your homes by way of social media this afternoon. To those of you who have locked in, I want to wish you a good night, and we will be here. I will see you on Friday, God's willing, where we will continue this effort. So we out. Stay safe, stay blessed.
Like you and me. It is for all them politicians, and I dig in their grave, no fuck with me hand. I find some of them, they living too long, and every 5 years is the same old song. Some of them dead, just shame to lie down, so I prepare for them a burial ground. Rowley, my first grave for he, with joy in my heart, put him down with glee. All of them useless politician, only making up numbers in my island. Al-Rari, I refuse body, I leave them Muslim, them to deal with he. Big smile on my face and with me bare hand, it's time to move trash from out of this land. Taking my time with he, I personally will prepare his body. Make sure he have a Sadon